Module 7, Global English and Content Language. This is our introduction video to this module. There is not a PowerPoint to view, so I created one on my own. Module 7 goals are to understand the importance of global English, be able to understand the common European framework of reference for language levels, be able to identify the needs of students using basic interpersonal communication skills and cognitive academic language proficiency, demonstrate a working knowledge of the content, language, and integrated learning, CLIL, revisit the history of English and how it has affected our current language. Readings. We are not reading from any of our textbooks. It is all articles, and so you can see you have 2 articles there for everybody. Graduates, you are reading one about Bix and Kelp, and then there are some videos to watch as well. So a general overview of the readings, important acronyms for ELL education. The first one is the Bix. This is recreational language, the language students use with their friends and their family, on social media, on the playground. Research says that it takes 6 months to 2 years of immersion to develop this type of language. The CALP, Cognitive Academic Language Proficiency. This is school language, academic language. It is much more difficult for students to learn. It is characterized by being very abstract, its content reduced, and specialized. Research says it takes 5 to 7 years of immersion for our English language learners to learn it. The ELPA 21 is the assessment that's used to determine a child's English language proficiency. If you have students in your class that are receiving ELL instruction, you will have access to their scores. It assesses listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Each component is scored 1 to 5, and 4 scores are reported. This would be an important piece of data for you to have as you are planning instruction for your students. And then there's the CLIL, the Content and Language Integration Learning. This is the curriculum that's used for ELL, ESL classrooms, and there is a video that summarizes this curriculum. I wanted to share a teaching resource that is not widely known, but one that I use quite often, and I think really applies to the components that we have learned about in linguistics. The teaching resource is called Sentence Stocking. If you looked it up on the internet, that's what it's called there. But I don't really like the idea of using the word stocking in a classroom at any grade level, so I changed the title of this instruction to Sentence Inspection. It could also be titled Sentence Surgery. So what is it? It is using anchor sentences from published works for writing instruction. So as writers, we should surround ourselves with good writing and therefore good sentences. Good sentences are filled with lively words, eloquent syntax, and lucid meaning. Stalking good sentences is paying attention to other writers and what they do well, what their craft. So sentence inspection in my classroom looked a little bit like this. I agreed. I think young writers should look at well-crafted sentences. We need to look at writing at the sentence level. And so teachers or students would find great sentences in the books that they were reading and contribute them to the class for inspection. This is an example of the graphic organizer that I would use for the students. At the top, I would give the name of the person that contributed it. This is one I used in 7th grade. We were reading The Outsiders as a read aloud, and the sentence that I contributed to the class was, "Here it was, only one feature in the gigantic skyline, but it was the mightiest, the Lord and Master." and that was contributed by from the author S.E. Hinton. And so the students have a place there to just notice something about that particular sentence. And then at the bottom is where we would write what the focused learning was. And I believe what I was doing with this sentence was descriptive language, or it could be metaphors. I'm not sure, I can't remember. So here are the steps. 1. Give students 5 minutes to write down all the things they notice about the sentence. And it can be anything, craft, structure, interesting words, meaning, what they think the meaning of that sentence is, their opinion of it, the voice. Then I would have students share what they thought. They could come up and point things out, or they could just read what they wrote down on their paper. The next step would be to have the contributor share the context of the sentence. So what was the meaning of the sentence in the context of the text that they found it in? And then last but not least, I would do a mini lesson on the focus teaching point. So an example from Al Moon, another example, this one would be more from elementary, was then he called back, who, just as if he and the owl were talking about supper or about the woods, or the moon, or the cold. And so that would be another example of a fabulous sentence that we inspected to learn more about how to become better writers. So when we think about sentence inspection and we compare the instructional sequence to our linguistics graphic organizer of the vocab of linguistics, we could say that it is an activity that could be incorporated into classroom instruction to support students in learning how to write. It hits all the major components of linguistics, and it teaches students how words come together to form sentences and the meaning those sentences have in a specific context. And it can be used in any content area. The teaching point would just vary, but I highly recommend it. I had a little jar in the back of my room where, as students were reading independently, I had blank strips of paper back there where they could write a great sentence that they found. They put their name on it. And then this was my mini lesson once a week during Writer's Workshop, where I would teach specific writing instruction. And I tell you, the more you use student sentences, the bigger the buy-in, the better the engagement, and I think the higher the learning. Maybe you can try it at some point next year in your classrooms. And let me know how it goes if you do. So our assignments for Module 7. The Module 7 discussion is the same as usual. You are picking one of 4 choices. Please make sure that you are explicitly telling me if you are using a personal connection, a classroom connection, or you are connecting it to the course materials. The discussion is due on Tuesday, and then the peer response is due on Wednesday. The assignment is something new and fun. You are creating an infograph or an information poster. You can also use a presentation if you would like. You can choose the purpose of either of those choices. And graduates, share your infograph presentation with your peer review partner and include their evaluation at the bottom of your submission. So when you are peer reviewing your partner's work, evaluate the infograph on accuracy of information and presentation. What did you learn? What did you find interesting? Or a suggestion or correction? And this can be shared in an email. If you are wondering how to go about creating an infograph or an information poster, I highly recommend Canva. It is a super easy and fun it's a website that you can use to create infographics. You will have the Module 7 self-evaluation quiz and then the e-learning journal reflection. These will be due on Wednesday, July 24th as well. And then the last assignment, this was an ongoing assignment that I believe was assigned in Module 2 or 3, probably Module 3. And this is where you are just sharing one of your assignments, graduates, that you have created in this class, and sharing it with your peer review partner, and having them give you feedback on that. And there is the rubric for that that you will use to give feedback. Please make sure you are submitting that with your reflection. Module 7 due dates. Tuesday, July 22nd, the discussion post is due. And then on Wednesday, July 23, everything else is due. Last but not least, please remember to email me with questions. The end is near. We are on the last week of the course, second to the last module. So please let me know if you have any questions or concerns, and I hope you enjoy the learning in Module 7.